Hello again. I've got this video I put together for you, Apple Motion again. This time I want to focus on the camera layer and the function that when you add this as an object, it does change the view quite a bit. So we're going to look at the position of the camera, the angle of view, depth of field, that sort of thing. I also want to do some animations on where we change the angle of view and the position to show the effect that happens there. So bear with me, it's not too long, but I think you'll find some interesting stuff in here. If you haven't used the camera much or you're a bit daunted by it, have no fear. It's a little bit simpler than it seems. So I'll be explaining various things along the way. So firstly, as I said, the angle of view is very important. There's a range of 0 degrees to 165. That will emulate a standard zoom on a camera. So most people are familiar with the 35mm lens, or 8mm lens is a very wide angle. 500mm lens zoom is a very narrow angle, so that's what we're getting at here. So firstly, I'm going to look at the camera angle view. As you see, I've made a bit of a composite. At the top there in the camera layer, you see I've got the camera tab selected, and you have all those numbers. The angle of view is animated there. And at the bottom, I've got the properties opened up, and you can see different things like far focus and near focus, that sort of thing. So as you see in the icon at the right, near focus pops up, the angle of view is there, focus offset, and far focus. So you can see the lines are indicating where the numbers are reacting to. So the camera types are simple, framing or viewpoint. And framing is at the subject, and viewpoint is from the camera. So, and here I've just looked at the angle of view, the equivalent to the focal length of a lens. Most people are familiar with the 8mm, 14mm, 500mm. So you can see the degrees, that's the angle of view that the lens actually allows. So you have a very narrow view when you zoom in on something. And the Apple Motion's camera works about the same way. So just know that equivalence is there. So, and here I've just animated the angle of view from 0 to 165. The little animation over at the right there is giving you an idea what's actually happening. You can see that the line of sight is lining up along the side walls more and more. It's giving the appearance that you're actually moving backwards, but it really is just the angle is getting wider and wider. Here I've done the opposite. I've left the angle of view alone, and I've just changed my Z position. I've animated that. Of course, you can do a pan with the X or elevate it with the Y, but this is just going in and back out again on the Z axis. And I've set them at 12,000 down to 3,000 pixels, and I wanted to keep it uniform throughout the video, so you can see the actual changes in real time. We zoomed out a bit. This is the angle of view is a default 45 degrees. It has a bit more of a normal look to it. When you add the camera to the project, you get up in the top left of the screen, you can see of the canvas window, that is, active camera tab is on. You can change that to top view, side view, that sort of thing. So get comfortable with that. Sometimes it helps to look down on the scene rather than in front of it. And here I've got a little composite showing, again, the properties, the camera tab, the top view, and the active camera view, so that you can get an idea what is actually happening. The scene icon there of the camera is moving forward, and the angle is getting wider as well. So you can get some pretty interesting effects going on. I hope the animation isn't too much for you. I wanted to try to make this more visual for you. And again, this is just another way of looking at it. I'm zooming the camera on a dolly track, just to give you a visual idea of what's actually happening when you change these numbers. So, And if we look at the geometry, getting into the box itself, you can see that the control points there are helping get you 1,000 by 1,000 squares. I've got one black and one white to start with, and then I've duplicated it, and I've grouped them up and that sort of thing to create these walls. So rotated them around and moved the anchor point so that they would rotate properly, that sort of thing. So the build of this looks a lot more complicated than it is, but it's basically just 6 black and white tiles along the wall and 3 black and white tiles going up. So when you are building these things, I think it's important to keep your anchor point at 0 and try to keep your positions close to 0 as possible. Obviously those tiles are going to be moving a bit, but the back wall is sitting at about 0 in the Z space. So it just helps you navigate throughout the project, especially when you're using a camera and you want to keep track of where that is as well. So the positions are all important to be mindful of. So, and as I click on each one of these groups, you can see the positions there at the left. The back is 3,000 pixels into space. Sometimes when you have the dolly zoom is saying 12,000 to 3,000 pixels, but in reality the wall is another 3,000 pixels behind 0. I think it's just good to get very comfortable with navigating around the canvas so you know where you are. So here we are, we've clicked on the camera. Notice the camera anchor point set, it's at minus 12,000. Just be aware of where all the anchor points are. You can see in the active camera view, sort of zoomed in a little bit, widened a little bit, and then rotated right around the box. This is where the framing or the viewpoint camera type comes in. And right now it's set to framing, so it's going to rotate around the center wherever you set the anchor points. And you can see it from the top view here, same thing. I'm zooming towards, but the anchor point is actually right back. You can just barely make out the X, Y, Z arrows. That's the anchor point. I usually work in framing because then you can always be focused on the subject. Now we're going to do both. As you see on the left there, the position is zooming in and the angle is getting wider at the same time. But you notice how the square is getting really distorted in doing this. So coming up, I thought what I'd do now is just do the zoom 12,000 pixels to 3,000 pixels and make the angle stationary. Here I've started with 24 degrees, so that doesn't change, but you can see that angle does make a difference on what you're actually seeing. It's a fairly tight angle, so you're not seeing a lot of the scene, and there's not a lot of distortion to the shape. So, but coming up here at 45 degrees, you see I've widened the angle a bit, and now it's you're seeing a bit more, and it's a little bit more distorted than the 24 degrees. So somewhere in between that, the 35 mil is what the human eye normally sees, just as a reference. But you see the pixels there are going up and up and up. So we're zooming a little bit further in. And each one of these scenes, here's 105 degrees. Each one of these scenes is a uniform dolly track movement. So it's just the angle we've changed here. So you see now it's getting a lot more distorted, but you're seeing a wider portion of the scene with the wider angle. I thought this might be a bit helpful for just as a guide, so you have that main difference. So here's 165 degrees. It's at the widest it can possibly be, and it's the same dolly zoom as I said, but you see it's taking a lot longer to bring that into view, and it's a lot more stretched. This is what happens with the angle of view or the focal length in a camera. It does change. And here I'm just going to combine the two. I'm going to be finishing up here shortly, so I hope this has been helpful for you to see it visually. So you can see there, I've done a little composite again, and you can see the numbers there on the left pertain to what you're seeing on the screen there. So I guess the most famous use of this type of effect is in Jaws when Brody sees the shark for the first time. So basically you're zooming in onto the subject and you're backing the track down away from the horizon. So I hope this was helpful for you. It was a bit more visual, and give the camera a bit of a go and see what sort of combinations you can come up with. So thanks for watching.